host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for a Dram with Friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 34. We welcome our new friend Jake Khym to the pub, a man following the way of the heart. Sit down as I pour us a dram. Welcome to another episode of A Dram with Friends. We are extremely excited to welcome Jake Khym into the pub today. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks so much, Sean. It's good to be with you.
And my understanding is you're not much of a whiskey guy, so if you were here, it would give me a good reason to open up an Abelauer 12, which is a very nice, easy sipping whiskey. So I'm going to partake. A dram is only an eighth of an ounce, so we're not talking a lot of whiskey. So
I got to be honest, Sean. I had to look up what a dram meant so I could come in and knew exactly what we're talking about. So
there you go. So yes, we're not encouraging copious amount of drinking, just a friendly taste of whiskey between friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. And I'm pretty sure you can cover all those topics.
I hope so.
So tell our audience who Jake Khym is.
Well, that's my name, and I live in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and I am been married to my lovely wife, Heather, for coming up on 21 years, and I have 3 kids. One's at Franciscan University in Steubenville, which I'm really excited about. That's my alma mater and where Heather and I met. Oh, wow. And then I have 2 other kids, a son who's 15 and then a daughter who's 14, and they both go to the local Catholic school here. Other than that, I've been doing kind of church work for quite a while now. So here's a funny thing that I was just talking to a friend about, and they were saying whenever you start talking about yourself, you automatically say what you do. And so I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to just acknowledge I'm a man like millions of others, and I work in the church and do various things, but have a podcast and things like that. So yeah.
It's called Way of the Heart, if I remember correctly.
That's the one I do with Brett.
Yeah, and Brett has been a previous guest in the pub, and you bring up a good topic that men often identify who they are with what they do. Yeah. Granted, it is part of their life, but my understanding is you're a psychologist, right?
Well, technically, I'm a psychotherapist, so a psychologist. Depending on what province you're from, I don't have a doctorate; I have a master's, and so that distinction. But I work with people who are wanting to improve their mental health. But I think what's interesting is that, a lot of people think when they think about counseling, they might go, oh gosh, you must see all this kind of like really intense. They kind of make it like Hollywood, and it's really not like that at all. Like what I say to people is that I work with the person that you would sit right next to in church. Most of the people that I work with, by far, they're very normal, good people. And like all of us, they have things that they want to work through. So I do a lot of that. But sometimes, it's funny, Sean, because I ask myself, am I actually doing counseling right now with this person? Or am I actually doing formation with them? And so when you start to work with me, I can blend all kinds of different things together. And so it's not like we're sitting there and, I don't do the classic question. So tell me, how does that make you feel? I don't say that 10 times every session, but really, I love helping people grow in their relationship with God, especially as a son or a daughter of the Father. And I also really love helping people grow in maturity, like in character, and like being a good man and a good woman instead of just mediocre kind of thing. So
well, and it's so important in today's world, and I was part of our peer support team for 19 years, I was one of the founding members of the peer support here in the Calgary Police Service,
Hmm.
and how important that is to have people to walk with when you're going through some some stuff, no matter
Yeah.
what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you having the faith in your back pocket as a tool that, because we know for ourselves that God is the answer,
Yeah.
and sometimes just helping people understand that God has a role in your daily life, and he's there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so
Yeah. I was just reading about something the other day. One of the types of therapy that I do is called schema therapy. And I won't go into all the definitions of it, but it's actually really congruent with a lot of, what people call inner healing and things like that. And basically what it is the things that happened to me in my life were part of my formation. They affected me. So I have these experiences and things, and then I feel things and I think things, and my body reacts to things because of those past experiences. Well, you put all of those thoughts and feelings and body reactions together, and you'd call that a schema. It's like a cluster of stuff that all comes together. Well, I was reading in this book about this guy who actually incorporates this with prayer, this schema idea. And he was saying a lot of people struggle because they don't know if there's anybody out there that could actually love them because they've had so many experiences of not being loved. And he was saying as a priest that that's one of the greatest things he loves doing with people is helping them encounter a God who is real and a God who loves them unconditionally, and how powerful that is when he's doing therapy with them. So you're right. It's a huge part of it. I'd probably keep it in my front pocket instead of my back pocket, but
yeah,
yeah.
well, and well, like so today at the time of this recording, a friend of mine is appearing on EWTN later today with Father
Awesome.
Mitch Pacwa,
Awesome.
and it brought up some memories. So a coworker of mine who was involved in a shooting,
Hmm.
it just happened that we had the Family Life Conference, which is very large in Alberta. It's
Hmm.
been going on for 25 years, and he was able to come with me in a peer support friend, whatever you want to call it, up
Yeah.
to this Family Life Conference and meet Father Mitch Pacwa, and just being able to have a safe place to get away from the news cycle, and be surrounded by people of prayer and just joy. And
Hmm.
I think it went a long way to help him on the journey of healing. And doesn't hurt when Father Mitch Pacwa hands you a card that it says, yeah, I bless this at the tomb of Jesus in the Holy Land.
Yeah, that's all. That is nice to have in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
fun.
so you must have had lots of journeys of your own. So you've got kids that are in high school and in university. So that's
Yeah.
I'm I've got a my youngest now is 15. She
Okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
who knows if your son and my daughter will cross paths. But I've got an
Yeah.
18-year-old in Ireland,
Oh wow.
and my son went to Ave Maria University in
Oh
Florida.
nice.
So I'm
Yeah.
familiar with Steubenville's still on the bucket list. I haven't made it there, but
Oh man. Yeah. You got to go out there on your bike with Bishop Scott.
yeah, yeah.
That would be fun. That'd be a sweet road trip to do. What's your, is it your daughter or son that's in Ireland? What are they doing there?
My 18-year-old daughter is with Net Ireland right now,
Okay.
so we're trying to figure out, hoping and praying that the government changes the rules to get her home again,
No
so that
kidding.
we're not paying for hotels for her to isolate. And
Yeah.
yes, so
Yeah. Oh man.
it's
That's a whole other topic, isn't it?
it is, and I'm sure that's impacted your life. But we were talking about it at our God Squad meeting last night, that it's also opened up doors for us to evangelize, and especially now, I think we are at a point where God's calling us to step out and
Mm.
invite people into the church
Mm.
like never before. So
Mm. Mm. It's reminding me of something that I was just praying about this morning. Is we're doing a lot of work outside of our house right now, and my neighbors. made a comment about something that they were concerned about something with the property line or whatever. And I got really frustrated at them. And I'll come back around to your point. But I noticed that I was really irritated with them, and it was sticking with me, right? I wasn't just like, oh, and I got over it. No, I was like hours of irritation. And then right before I go to bed is kind of like one of the times I try to carve out some time to pray. And I felt God say the simplest things about what he's all about, which is love your neighbor and love your enemy. And I sat there and went, oh man, are those one and the same person? Because that's like double time for me that that's a strong word to say they're my enemy, but emotionally they were my enemy in that moment. And so when you're talking about like inviting people into, the church, it really struck me when I was praying, because I thought, have I been treating them in such a way that they would ever consider Jesus as somebody important in their life? And it really convicted me, because I'm sitting here talking to you. I have a podcast. I do all this other stuff. And yet my neighbor, who Jesus kind of highlighted them as like really important on the list, like love God and love your neighbor, like literally my neighbor, like right over there. And
He wasn't talking about our neighbors, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, right. I was just convicted because, when we're talking about inviting people in, I think that, I have to ask myself, when I'm inviting them in, what am I inviting them into? And am I inviting them into something that is better than their way of life? And you and I know that. We believe that that's the case. But it convicted me of, am I living my life in such a way that somebody could go, man, there's something different about him? And I was convicted. So when I think about inviting people in, I'm trying to live my life in such a way that my neighbor might go, hey, what, tell me more about you. And if I said, like, would they ever come with me to church, or would they ever, whatever? So I hear
Well,
you.
our
Yeah.
our our Muslim neighbors did come with us to church,
How
so
did you do that?
it's yeah, well, and just it's funny, the young man has been basically part of our family. He's
Wow.
like he's in the military college now in Quebec, but he stopped by to make sure he said goodbye to us as he was leaving, and just
Wow.
he was very much included growing up as part of our family. So,
Wow. Wow.
and that's just having those doors open, and that's where we really need, especially as we're hopefully coming out of this time,
Hmm.
to encourage our fellow churchmen, because there's been a lot of divisiveness through this time.
Hmm.
Even, are you getting vaccinated? Are you? I'm
Yeah.
not. Are you wearing a? Like,
Yeah.
just I can't get into mass.
Yeah.
So just we've got an opportunity here to love everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Uh,
remember,
Go ahead.
I remember, I worked with Youth at Risk, and I challenged
Mm.
I was speaking at the Western Canada Call to Protect,
Hmm.
and I said, so I tell this young person that God loves them, has an amazing plan for them.
Right.
Now, what church do I send them to that
Huh.
they're going to feel that walking in the door?
Right. 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 That's amazing. When you say that you worked with at-risk youth, was that as a police officer and your work in
Yes.
that? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first one was called Youth at Risk Development, or YARD, and it was both projects were brand new, had to be researched, the whole thing,
Mm.
and they were youth at risk of falling into gangs. And then the second one was identity
Mm.
based wraparound intervention,
Mm.
which was geared towards first and second generation immigrant youth. So
Wow. Wow. Have you ever had a chance to talk to your audience about what you do? Because
uh,
usually you're asking all the questions.
Uh, and I, my audience, I've been putting on men's conferences for 24 years, so I
Yeah.
slip stuff in every now and then, mainly as
Right.
challenges,
Yeah.
especially for you're looking at that young man sideways instead of giving him a smile,
Mm-hmm.
a hope, a
Mm.
chance.
Mm.
And like, I'm not saying don't be prudent and
Yeah.
protect your family and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm saying be inviting like Jesus was.
I love that because I mean you're talking about a field of work that is, at least from the outside, I know very little about police work, but it seems very confrontational, right? It's usually you're walking into situations that are confrontational. I can't say that I'm happy when the guy pulls me over for going too fast, right? It's like immediately confrontational, but that's just really cool that when you're doing that, right, you're trying to see beyond the current situation that you might have to deal with an at-risk youth, but how can I help them come to know the Lord? Like that's awesome
Yeah,
and not always done.
and obviously that's not the program, right? But
Yeah.
as the young men, because it was mainly young men that are the at the greatest risk of falling into
Hmm.
gangs,
Yeah.
but even the young women, as they got to know me, they asked me what makes me tick, and
Oh,
I'm going to be honest with them, like,
yep.
because I believe that I've got a vocation from God, and yeah, when you're calling for help, and I've been the guy kicking down the door uh, to help with that instant conversion because you haven't treated your wife the way God wants you to treat her.
Instant conversion. That's awesome.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I appreciate how the Lord works in all kinds of various fields. The other thing I was praying about today is we were talking about men's ministry. I know you and I both do men's retreats and men's ministry, and we've touched base about that before. But I'm regularly asking the question of myself because I work and I live in a very unique environment where almost everybody that surrounds me and most of the people that I interact with have a faith base or have a faith background. Like a lot of the work that I do these days is with leaders or with
Mhm.
priests, with bishops, etc. So I'm really right in kind of working with leadership in the church. And so when you're talking about an at-risk youth, like it, or just an average dude who's out there, I sometimes forget what their worlds are like because I'm so in that circle. And so I was thinking today, because our men's retreat's coming up in October, and I was thinking about like, how are men doing? I was just asking myself the question, what's going on in their world? How have they been doing with COVID? What's the impact? Because again, I'm in that small world, and I want them to know the Lord. And so it's cool to hear, because you have the foot in both in a way, right? Because you're not retired yet
No,
from police
I'm
work.
in right now. I'm a school resource officer, so I'm in a Catholic high school and a public high school. So I've got two schools. Obviously, one I can be a little freer about talking about God, and the other one I just try to live by that example,
Yeah.
and you know be be that example of
Hmm.
of what we should do.
Yeah.
Do I fall short? Absolutely.
Oh, sure. 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 Yeah. We
But
all do.
yeah,
We all do.
and I just before I came on with you, I recorded a video for the 2021 graduates from the Catholic high school, and you're able to talk about God having a plan in their life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Yeah. It is, I mean, yeah, it is exciting. And I care. I know you do too. That's why we do what we do. I mean, I care about those guys who are, the guy who drives to work every day 30 minutes and he's just, paycheck to paycheck. And, I mean, there's so much reality where I know God is longing and desiring to meet people right where they're at. And, a phrase that I say, Sean, to myself that I really wish people could come to know is that Jesus, first of all, is real. It's not a fairy tale. He's real. He's a historical person as well as God. And I have to regularly remind myself that Jesus is right about and adequate to everything, every time, for everyone. And so if no matter what I'm doing, Jesus is right about, like, he has the right approach. He has the right response for every time, no matter the situation, no matter what's going on. Like, he's the most brilliant person that has feet ever touched this earth. And he also saved us from our sin. So that, I mean, I'm just setting that aside as if that's something you just set aside, like, but we turn to so many people for, like, how do I do life? How do I be a good person? And I just love the thought of people being reintroduced to Jesus as somebody who's relevant, as a real person to consider when you're thinking about how should I conduct myself with my neighbor, whatever, right? I just think a fresh introduction to who Jesus is really compelling, because in some ways it's gotten all clouded and stuff. And so it just makes me think about that. That's what you're doing, right? You're inviting people into a fresh encounter with who Jesus is, instead of maybe the historical junk that's kind of crept in. So
Yeah, and so I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with different things, but in working with youth at risk, we talk about a strength-based approach, and I, well, God Squad, we've tried to, especially in the last number of years, take that approach with the church, because we can get bogged down in the mudslinging and
that's
the
true, man.
whereas if we just keep pointing to the truth and beauty of the church, yes, there's sinners in there. Yes, there's bad people. And God has called certain people to deal with them. I'm not going to change anything in Rome. But I can change
Yeah.
what I do here
Hmm.
with my ministry.
Yeah.
And here is the truth and beauty of our church
Hmm.
that has gone on since the time of Jesus. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like, I think, Pope, or not Pope Francis, but Saint Francis gets credit for this quote. I don't know if he historically said it or not, but preach the gospel and use words if necessary. And that's a nice, pithy, kind of catchy little phrase. But when you actually think about it, it's what was convicting me when I was praying about my neighbor was, am I preaching the gospel not having to actually say, do you know who Jesus is, and that kind of thing, And yeah, you're right. We can get so distracted with so much stuff that I think just makes us feel good about, like, I'm going to get all mad about something because it gives me a break from my own garbage that I don't want to look at or I don't want to deal with. So I'm going to go complain about somebody else, here, that's really my point when I was saying about Jesus a moment ago, is Jesus has a response to that, right? And his response is, take the plank out of your eye before you start working on the speck in the other guy's eye. There it is again. Like,
yeah.
he offers a really compelling way to live.
Well, and for those that don't know, Jake was a speaker at our conference this year, and you can go to godsquad.ca if you want to hear the talk. And he did an amazing job, very positive feedback. But last year, our focus was on joy, and
Hmm.
how many of us lose that?
Hmm.
Do we portray that in our life?
Hmm.
And one of the areas that I find joy is when I'm cooking and feeding people. So do you have something that you do to for
Oh
your
man,
family that's your go-to?
so. If I'm hearing you right, you like to cook for people, and that brings you joy. Is that?
It
Am I?
bring,
Yeah,
it brings me joy, but it also helps me to spread joy.
I
So
get you. Well, yeah. Who doesn't like a good cook? um, yeah. So when I think about spreading joy, I think one of the things that a lot of times when people, maybe they come to a retreat or whatever, is they don't know me apart from being the guy up on the stage. And so I actually love to play and, like, have fun, and I love to laugh. And one of the things that brings me a lot of joy is fathering my kids. And so my son is really getting into golf,
okay.
and I used to play a lot of golf when I was younger. And so it's this really interesting thing in this father-son relationship where like I just go, God, what are you up to? Because you put this passion for golf in my son, which is this sport that I kind of hung up the clubs and was like, yeah, I don't have time for that anymore. And now my son's like asking all the time, Dad, can we go play? Dad, can we go play? And so what's bringing me joy, and it's really fostering, I think, joy in him as well, is just being able to share in those experiences with him. And so one of our favorite things is to, when we go play golf or we go do that, is the people that you encounter, because it's just like, you know, a certain kind of people often at a golf course. And Judah, my son, just, he loves those people, and it just brings him joy. And I'm smiling because he's just like, we're outside, it's beautiful, and I'm with these totally different kind of people that I've never known before. And so how I tried to bring my daughter into it, because she's very, very artsy, and I was like, I felt a bit, you know, bad that I wasn't going to spend 2 hours or so with her. So I said, do you want to come? And so we played this. It was really fun. We played a game, and she got to come. She absolutely hated it. And she goes, Dad, that was really nice, but I don't ever want to do that ever again, which I just thought was hilarious. And so basically, I like to, especially my families, I like to goof off and play and have fun and lighten the mood. And I really do that with my kids. I see my wife, Heather, rolling her eyes almost, you know, 10 times a day, because I'm just goofing off. You know, I'm goofing off with my
I
kids and
I
making
I
faces.
may identify with that,
Yeah.
and because Michelle accuses me of, I break into song quite often. She'll say
Yeah.
like, "You're driving me crazy," and I'll break in, "You
Right.
drive me crazy," and
Well,
then
has your wife ever said to you that you got to stop whistling? Because we have this theory that once you cross like 40 or you cross a certain age, it's like men just start whistling and they can't help it. And I'll find myself just whistling, and Heather's like, stop it, just out of nowhere. I'm like, what? I don't even know. And my kids just, oh, it's so funny. They're like, Dad, it's really great, but you're so off key. Like if you could just whistle on key, it'd be better, but it's like nails on the chalkboard. So yeah,
there you go. Well,
yeah,
and one of the things that we've recently taken up is disc golf. So you get
yeah.
lots of fun with the family and some exercise, and it doesn't take quite as long as real golf. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. It's not, yeah. Speaking of games, just for a minute, we just found this thing. So this is a shameless plug. We're not getting anything for this, but there's a game called the Catholic Game, and you can go and Google it. And we bought that for our kids, and we've had a lot of fun playing that. And it's basically like you get a category that goes out, and then you have a bunch of cards in your hand, and you have to like put a card out that matches the category, but it's all Catholic stuff.
oh wow.
And so it's really fun because you can make jokes by the card that you put down or whatever. And so that's been really neat to do with our kids too.
I may have to look for that one. One of our former team members from God Squad's a huge board game guy, and he gave us a game called Commissioned, which we're still figuring out how to play. But yeah, it's there's so many good board games out there that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just fun.
So in one of my segments is as you know, a lot of our young men are especially struggling even with what a man is. What advice do you give your 18-year-old self?
Yeah. I really appreciate that question, because a little context of my 18-year-old self is I'm going off to university. I'm American and Canadian, so I'm in the States at this time, and I am terribly insecure. But I have a really good facade and a really good front I put up. And so I think the thing I would want to say to my 18-year-old self is I would have to pull him aside, because what I would say to him would probably like, it would just like expose a lot of the stuff. So I wouldn't want to say it in front of a bunch of people, you know, but I'd probably pull him aside and just want him to, first of all, I'd want him to know that I see what's actually going on behind the mask, and you're still lovable. And I would also want him to know that it's gonna be okay, and God is gonna provide incredible people to come into your world to father you, and to basically help you become the man that you're called to be. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to kind of grip life so tightly. And, you know, I struggled with a lot with anxiety then, but again, I had this facade. I was really good at faking it. I would also say that, I mean, it's kind of weird because right at that time, part of my testimony is about a recovery from sexual addiction. And so right at that time, I was in the thick of sexual addiction and going to women as the answer to all my problems. And I would basically just want to acknowledge that with him and say, you've got a great path of healing coming up. And buckle your seatbelt because you're going to become a great man. But it's not going to be easy. And I'd probably have the Rocky music playing in the background that whole time because I get really inspired. I get inspired pretty easy. But basically I would just want to love him. I would want to say, I see you. Don't stop, stop faking it. You're going to be okay. And I love you. So let's do this. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to send you a YouTube video of a song that I think you might appreciate. So, and then the next segment is Jeff Cavins talks about riding with your posse. So, who are your go-to saints? Who are the ones that you walk with every day?
That's awesome. I would say probably the biggest, most prominent would be Saint Therese of Lisieux. She has been supernaturally involved in my life. I never had sisters growing up, had two older brothers. And so I always wanted to have a sister. And when I was, actually, this is really cool. When I was, it would have been when I was 18, was the first time that I encountered Saint Therese. I went to university and that was one of the first times I started to get involved in the church for real. And it was like 18 or 19 that I went away for one of my first real retreats. And the priest who walked with me, it was a week by myself in Texas.
Wow.
And I was a passionate dude. And so he gave me the book called, I Believe in Love. And it was like a retreat based on Saint Therese. That was the first time that I ever encountered her. And that week was absolutely life-changing. But here's the crazy part. At the exact same timeline and time frame, my wife, who I didn't know, and we would meet like 6 years later, she started praying that same, I think we've even narrowed it down to like the same 2 to 3 months. She started praying to Saint Therese for her new spouse, whoever her spouse would be. And so that was me. And so she started praying and I encountered Saint Therese right there. I mean, Sean, I have so many stories about things that she's done. Like I have a first class relic of Saint Therese of her hair.
Wow.
A piece of Saint Therese's hair that was given to me. That's a whole other story. That's just like incredible. So Saint Therese is a big one. I feel really blessed that like, I really love her and she's my big sister and my little sister. She's my little sister in a way that I'm older than her. And she's always chooses to be the little one, but she's my big sister because she teaches me a ton about how to actually be a man of faith and a man of prayer. And she was a tough cookie. Like a lot of people think she was kind of pushover. She was no pushover. She was a solid woman. So Saint Therese is a big one. I'd say another one would be Saint John Paul II. So much of the way that I think about the world and life, etc., is from him. He was a major part of, when I was studying theology at Franciscan, that was right in his prime. He just had so many things coming out in his pontificate. So I have so much gratitude for him because I feel like he taught me how to think and taught me how to see the world. And then I would say the last one that has been more of a more recent one, probably in the last 10 years, has been Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph is my confirmation name. And I just picked it because honestly, I asked the priest, I got confirmed in university because I was a bit rebellious in high school. And I was like, I'm not doing this, Mom, Dad, you can't make me. And anyway, that's another story. But I asked the priest, what name should I take? I don't really know. And he goes, well, probably the greatest male saint ever is Saint Joseph. So why don't you just go ahead and pick the best one? I was like, awesome. I like that. Okay. And so ever since then, he's just become a part of my life. And so I have an incredible admiration for him, and I have a regular recourse to him, basically where I go, St. Joseph, I need you to show me how to be a strong man. I need you to show me how to be a good father. I need you to show me how it's going to, I'm still going to be okay if I keep my mouth shut. I don't have to always, figure it out or do it. Or, he was like incredibly strong to be able to not have any like headlines in the Bible. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I would say that those three, I have some other ones, but those are the main three.
And yeah, St. Joseph is near and dear to me. I've been walking with him for a long time, and as I sent you the invite to join us for the novena, which we have said before every conference for the last 24 years. And if people want to hear or follow along on that novena, it is on the God Squad website, and we invite you to join us in prayer on that. I say it every year for the conference, and I usually end up saying it at least 2 to 3 times during the year for some favor or another, because
Yeah.
as a father of 8, grandfather of 11, he's a handy buddy to have.
Isn't he? It's so true. Have you ever heard the story? I think it was Father Benedict Groeschel, and he said this thing, and I'm pulling this out of the archives here in my mind, but apparently he encouraged everybody, just like what you and I are talking about right now, to have like your inner circle of saints, that they're your go-to people. And so there's stories of him, like about to go to a meeting or about to go do something, and he would like have this idea of, he would go to like the inner circle, and it'd be like the Lord and his key saints, and he would turn to them regularly for intercession. And it was very real for him. And I always admired that it was like they were very close. It wasn't just this some superhero that I kind of get to know. I've always appreciated, like, you've got your tight squad,
Yeah. Well, and St. Michael is in there for me as a patron of police officers. He's ridden in the police car for the last 31 years. So I don't know if you know, but the origin of whiskey is a Gaelic word called Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And my prayer is that you continue to lead many souls to the true water of life. And I hope and pray that one day we will cross paths face to face, and you can join me in the pub here, or I'll be out that way, or we'll meet in the middle in BC somewhere. But thank you for joining us today, and I really appreciate all you do.
Thanks so much, Sean. Thanks for having me.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Like and subscribe. Go to all podcast platforms to look for it on podcast, or go to godsquad.ca to support our mission.